Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's Wraith here, back with another video, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about how to survive early game in Season 5. Now, I know so many players, including myself, struggle with early game fights, whether it's in arena, tournaments, or even sometimes for a lot of you guys in pubs. Like, it's just so difficult because, especially with 50% chest range, or 50% chest spawn, it's so difficult to find a gun, get looted up, get stacked, and then fight. Like, there's so many times where you just die to other people, and you can't really control it, or you take a bad fight, etc., etc. So basically in today's video, I'm going to be talking about how you guys can start winning more of your early game fights, which will overall help you do better in the game. And obviously, if it's in a tournament, you're going to do a lot better overall if you're not dying 5 out of the 10 games. Same with arena, you're going to win a lot more points and gain a lot more points if you're not dying early game. So if you're looking forward to this video, make sure you slap a like button on it, comment what you want to see for a future video, hit that subscribe button, use creator code WraithFN in the item shop, and let's get into it. So for the first tip, and it's going to be talking about more right as you're landing, like right as you're dropping in, it's to don't land close to someone. Now, a lot of you guys might be like, well, yeah, no, obviously you don't land close to someone, but you guys would be surprised how many people, and it may be yourself, I do it all the time, where you land the same building as someone or right next to someone, like the building next to them. And right now, it basically is considered a 50-50. And you guys might be like, well, what do you mean? You have a full house to loot, like there's a couple chest spawns, a couple floor loot spawns, how's it a 50-50? And obviously, if you land on the same house as someone, it is a 50-50. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is because with 50% chest spawn, you have such little loot and such more RNG to compare, where it's going to be more of a 50-50 fight. And if you guys don't know what 50-50 means, it basically means that 50% of the time you're going to lose a fight and 50% of the time you're going to win the fight. So the reason for this is, let's say you're landing Craigie and you land one of the white tops and the other person lands one of the white tops, the one right next to it. In 10 games, if you do that every single 10 games, 5 of the games you might have a shotgun and some shield, and in the 5 other games, you're going to have a pistol, or you're going to have an SMG with no shield, and the other person is going to have a shotgun and shield, right? So obviously, you can be the best player in the world. You can be a really, really good player, but if you just keep landing next to someone and half the time you only have a pistol or an SMG and they have a shotgun, it doesn't matter. You're most likely going to lose a fight. Now, obviously, you might clutch up a couple times, hit a couple headshots with your pistol or SMG, kill them, which is 100% good, but you're going to be dying a bunch of times. So, for example, if you take kind of a tournament where you have a 10-game status, and 4 of those games you get bad RNG from that one house, and only 1 out of the 3 chest spawns, 1 of the floor loot spawns, and you only get a pistol and SMG or an AR and 50 shield, and they get a shotgun, 3 of those 10 games you die off spawn because you're right next to someone, well, then that's 3 games you've just wasted of getting good points, doing well. And the same thing goes for arena. That's 3 games where you've just lost points early on because you've landed next to someone. So there's not much you can do, just besides when you're landing in, make sure you're aware of what's going on. You got to be aware if someone's landing right next to you. If you are, you got to make sure that if you don't have good loot, you got to dip out of there, which I'll talk about in a bit. But if you do have good loot, then obviously you can feel a little bit more confident pushing, but just be aware of where other people are. So now my next tip is kind of piggybacking on the last one, and it's be aware of your surroundings, not only while you're looting up, but when you're dropping in. So the biggest thing for this is when you're landing, you got to make sure you know where people are landing and how many people are at your POI. And there's tons of reason for that. One would be for that 50-50, you got to know if someone's landing beside you, so if they're going to push up or you can push them. You got to know how many people are landing your POI. Let's say, again, you're landing Craigie and there's 4 people. Well, you got to make sure you always have somewhat idea of where those 4 people are, because if you end up fighting, there's most likely 2 or more people are going to come push you in third party, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So always knowing where people are, how many people landing wherever you're landing. If you land some out of the spot POI or some out of the place no name location and there's still one person, you always got to know that there's one person looting, so you're most likely going to end up in a fight unless you dip or they dip. So just being aware of how many people, where they are at all times if possible. The next would be being aware of when you're looting, where you can build and where loots is. And that kind of goes in with map knowledge. So again, we'll go back to Craigie. You got to make sure you kind of generally know where every single chest spawn could spawn, where a lot of floor loot spawn is, as well as places that you can't build. Especially in this season, there's so many places on top of houses and archways inside of buildings where you can't place walls. So it's super, super frustrating. And you got to know, I know there's so many times I've died where I'll go to place a wall and just nothing places and they just shotgun me because there's no builds intercepted, right? So you just got to make sure you try your best to know where you're landing so you know if there's places you can or cannot build. So my next tip is kind of obvious, but a lot of people struggle to do this one, and it's looting as much as possible. Now, a lot of you guys might be like, well, yeah, obviously I want to loot, but then I'm going to go push people. But in reality, you don't want to push people when you have a bad loadout, because obviously, again, with that 50-50, they could have a super, super good loadout. They could have a golden tack, a golden scar, and full shield, and you have a green SMG. Now, obviously, that's most likely not going to happen, but you never know, right? Like, they could really get lucky and get some really good chests or floor loot spawns. So when I say loot as much as possible, hit as much as you possibly can, as well as farm as much as you possibly can. So many people don't farm early game, and trust me, if you have really good mats early game, it will tilt the fight advantage so much in your favor, even if you have bad loot. Like, if you have 700, 800 mats and your opponent only has 150 mats, even if they have a purple tack and you have a green SMG, green AR, you're going to be in a really good position, because you can just keep taking height, keep going for that wall replace, keep pushing them and focusing on the spray with them, and then soon they're going to run out of mats, and then you can easily kill them, right? So a lot of people don't worry about farming, but if you have more mats than your opponent by like 200-300 mats, trust me, it makes all the difference. You can win probably 50% more of your fights just by farming up more and focusing on farming. My kind of rule of thumb before pushing someone, obviously, unless I have super, super good loot and they're right next to me and I know there's a low chance they have good loot, I like to always have around 400 mats, 50 shield, a shotgun, and a spray weapon, whether that's an AR, an SMG. Sometimes I'll feel confident if it's a pistol, depending on what the situation is. But yeah, that's kind of what I like to have before a fight. Obviously, it depends in each situation. Like I said, if someone lands right next to you and you already have a green tack and 50 shield and they've only had time to loot one chest, it's a good chance you have a little bit better loot than them. So obviously it's a little bit different. You can decide when to push, but trust me, farm up and it'll spend more time looting. So my next tip is, don't be afraid to disengage. So many people feel the necessity to kind of fight off spawn and get that kill, and unless you're in a tournament where you need as many kills as possible, like because you died 5 games in a row or something like that, you don't need to push up. Whether it's an arena or if you're just W keying, obviously it's a little bit different, but if you're playing the game to either win or do good or get a couple kills, make it to end game, whatever the case is, don't be afraid to disengage. Like, if you have a shotgun but you're only at 80 HP, or you have an AR, SMG, 50 shield, no shotgun, don't be afraid to just leave. If there's a lot of people in your POI or a lot of people in your spot, just dip. Like, there's no need to run or no need to fight if you don't have to, unless someone pushes you. And even then, there's some opportunities for you to leave. Obviously, don't leave if they're just going to bill you in the back, but there's a lot of times you can disengage from a fight where people don't. They just end up W keying, and there's no reason for it. Like, right, you can just leave. There's cars in the game, you can run away. There's so many ways to disengage from fights, and for some reason some people just like to W key, which isn't a bad idea. But if you really want to survive and get more kind of off win spawns or off spawn wins, there you go, just disengage from the fight. So my next tip, and this is a super important one, and it's worrying about your position at all times during an early game fight. This again will make a difference for probably, I'd say, 60% of your fights, because majority of the time, especially if you're landing POIs, there's more than one person. So if you're positioning yourself where you're always going to be the third party, or you're always going to be on the outside of the person, you're going to win a lot more fights, because you don't have to worry about getting double teamed. So basically what I mean about that is, let's say that there's 2 other people that land your POI, right? And you're landing on the far right side, and then someone's landing on, 2 of them are landing on the far left side, right? It's very much better for you, because when you push up, they're going to fight most likely first, right? They're going to end up fighting, and then you can just third party them. But unfortunately, if you're in the other position and you landed close to someone and another person landed far right, you're going to be the one getting third partied, right? And I can't stress this enough. No matter what you do, always try not to be in between 2 people, because if you're in between, like, let's say someone lands at the far left side of a POI, someone lands the far right of a POI, and then you land in the middle, either of them can push you. And if someone hears fighting, they're most likely going to push. So if the right person on the right pushes you, the person on the left most likely is going to push you. If you push the person on the right, the person on the left is going to come push you. If you push the person on the left, the person on the right is going to come push you, and you're stuck in the middle no matter what, right? So always avoid being in the middle of 2 or 3 or even 4 people, because it's just so much more likely that you're going to get sprayed in the back, you're going to get hit with your AR, you're going to get sniped. Even if you kill the other person, if you get damaged quite a bit and you get down to 50 HP, the other person's just going to come up and push up, right? So it's super important to make sure you're always positioning to be the third party instead of being third party, because if you do and you're in a bad position, there's way more likely that you're going to get third partied and die, right? Obviously there's a decent amount of time where you can win both fights, but just in my opinion, it's super important to have solid positioning and know where you are. And again, that comes back with knowing your surroundings and where enemies are landing and where you're landing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you slap a like button on it, comment what you want to see for a future video, hit that subscribe button, use creator code WraithFN in the item shop, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.